Hello everybody, it's time once again for another of my still frame reviews. Last week I reviewed Schindler's List and said that while I disliked Schindler's List for its lack of message and general feeling of despair, there was another Holocaust film out there that actually got it right. One that acknowledged all the horrors of the Holocaust while still maintaining a message of hope and not just one long, shocking pity party. So, what is this magical movie that seems to defy the very nature of the Holocaust and actually find something good to celebrate? If you guessed The Great Dictator by Charlie Chaplin, that would be weird, because the title of this video clearly says The Hiding Place. You're kind of weird, you know that? Well, anyway, released in 1975 based on the autobiography of the same name, The Hiding Place follows Corrie and her Christian Dutch family as Germany invades Holland. With the aid of the Dutch resistance movement, the family hides Jews away from the Nazis in a secret part of their house. However, after years of hiding the Jews, the Nazis eventually discover what's going on, and they arrest the whole Ten Boom family. Corrie is separated from her father and brother and is sent to a women's concentration camp with her sister Betsy. There she must struggle with following God's command to forgive her torturers, and she must reconcile the horrors of the concentration camp and the belief that God is loving. So, as far as the good things of this movie, it's not a fancy movie, but it feels real. The real Corrie ten Boom helped write the screenplay, and she also makes a brief appearance at the end of the film. The whole story just comes across as genuine. There's no witty dialogue or clever story devices. It's a real story told by the real people who had to live it. And that's a very rare thing to find in film. I also really appreciate how, even though there's no real big-name film talent, the actors in this really give it their all in their performance. In fact, Junek, the woman who plays Corrie ten Boom, this is her film debut. She was normally a stage actress. And cool factoid, she was actually from Houston and she founded the AD Players, which is a very well-known Christian-based theater group here in Houston. Another thing about this movie is I appreciate how they handle these things tastefully. You get an idea of what's going on in the concentration camp without having to see any full nudity or excessive violence. Which is why I was able to see this movie when I was about 8 years old. Since I was homeschooled, I got to learn about the Holocaust at the same time as my older junior high age sisters, and also got to watch this movie with them too. And I think that was good. I think that was a good experience because learning about this subject at a young age really helped me realize that suffering is a part of the human experience, and the Holocaust need not be this taboo we tiptoe around all the time. Genocide happens, it's happening right now as I speak, and instead of ignoring it, we need to be able to face it head on and figure out what to make of it, humanity, good, evil, and ultimately God, in a world where things like this happen. The point is, even though it's restrained and tasteful, you still feel the horror of what it would be like to live in one of these camps. But the biggest thing I like about this movie is its message. While Schindler's List asks, how could there be so much suffering in this world, and then left with a big shrug, this movie answers by saying man is evil, God is good. We live in a duality of two worlds, the physical and spiritual. And even if the worst thing imaginable happens to you in the physical world, if that circumstance brings you closer to God, then He has produced a net positive from that evil. This clip typifies what I'm talking about.
You see what's around you. We see another world, just as real. Our life with God. You think the two can't exist side by side, but we know they do. We live them both.
I am Maria Procek, first violinist of the Warsaw Symphony Orchestra. Did your God will this?
We cannot answer. All I can say is that the same God you are accusing came and lived in the midst of our world. And He was beaten. And He was mocked. And He died on a cross. And He did it for love. For us.
And why do you think your God of love sent you here?
To obey Him.
If you know Him, you don't have to know why.
And I think that's exactly right. and it's Corrie's burden throughout the rest of the movie to obey God in forgiving her captors and family's murderers. And it's through obeying him that she grows closer to him. And she wouldn't grow closer to him without these horrendous circumstances in the first place. And I think that's a fantastic message, and probably the best you could put in a Holocaust movie. So the message is good. Is there anything bad about this movie? Yes. The movie's ugly as sin, as par the course for 70s movies, and the 70s in general. However, a lot of that is due to the degraded film print in the digital copy. So the color's off, the picture's blurry, and you get a bunch of spots and lines on the edges, and the audio's all muffled. I have not been able to find a remastered version, as this movie has largely gone ignored in the film community ever since its limited release, and I think that's a real shame. So if you happen to know where I can find a better quality copy, let me know. However, all the ugliness kind of works in the movie's favor. It's an ugly aesthetic for an ugly topic. Also, the writing's pretty lackluster. While they get everything they need to across, there's nothing where I would point to it and say, oh, that's good writing right there. It's just decent. They say what they need to say. So, is The Hiding Place one of the greatest movies of all time? Certainly not. In fact, in my personal rating score, I'd give it a C for Corrie. It's fine. But I really just wanted to show what a contrast this movie makes to last week's movie. While Schindler's List was very Hollywoodized and it had beautiful cinematography and attractive big name actors full of sex scenes and shock value, the violence plastered all over the screen and that's R-rated glory, it ultimately left me feeling hollow, having nothing to say other than suffering happened, how terrible. Whereas The Hiding Place has no artistic prowess, no Oscar-worthy acting, cinematography, or writing. It's quiet and restrained, yet it left me with something of value. A quiet, earnest message put forward by someone who was actually there. Someone who said, "This is what I learned while experiencing the suffering for myself." And it's the kind of message I can get behind. In fact, the only message that makes sense in the face of ultimate human suffering. While one film looked good on the outside but had nothing to offer in spirit, this film doesn't look like much on the outside, but it makes up for it in heart 100%. Well, that's it for this review. I think after 2 weeks of Holocaust movies, I think I've flushed all the Disney out of my system, just in time as I've received a couple of Disney-related requests for my next reviews. But if you have any suggestions on other movies you'd like to hear my thoughts on, comment below and let me know. Also, have you seen The Hiding Place before? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. That's it for now. See you later.